In the previous video, we got these fenders done and we're moving on. There's three main sections of this front end that we have to address. We addressed the fenders. Now they're not finalized or completely done. One of y'all did point out that one side seems flatter than the other side. They look pretty freaking close in person from everything we can tell. The way the paint is grinded off of them and the way the panels are cut different does make it slightly look a little different. This side kind of looks like it's a little higher in the front than the other side. And so we're probably going to have to make some adjustments. So we ordered a tool that's a curve or contour curve template or whatever. Basically you curve it and you tighten it down and it'll show you the curve. And I'll show you that when that comes in. And we're going to double check these curves to make sure they're not too far off. We need to cut something apart and remake something. But in the meantime, we're gonna move on with our other issues. Our other issues is the front grille. We are 4 inches short if you watched in the previous video where we need to basically add a bar to the grille. Now the grille has all of these different bars in it that goes across the front. These right here, which I have taken off. And in order to have that bagged look where the bumpers lay on the ground on this car, you gotta do some modifications. If not, we're gonna be stuck with a vehicle that looks like all the rest of them, that when the rockers are laid out, the bumpers are not actually touching the ground, and we don't want that. We want the front bumper, back bumper, rockers all on the same plane, and that means we have to extend the front. So last weekend, Sunday afternoon, I didn't film it. I spent a lot of time taking this front end apart. A lot of rusty bolts, a lot of, it was bad in here on the floor, the amount of just rust on the floor, and I blew everything out, cleaned everything up, and broke everything down. I think it was Wednesday night, I worked on figuring out the layout of this grill. Okay, and so that's what I've done with this template. This is the grill out of the car, or the backing for the grill. Okay, and then the bars bolt across it. Now we got a little bit of rust damage on this, which we need to take care of. That's easy. Besides that, it does have rust, okay, like this. But I think we're just gonna treat it and we're gonna utilize it because there's no reason to replace it. These things are about $600-700-ish on eBay. You can expect to pay $700-800 for a brand new one. And I just cannot stomach paying $700 or $800 just to cut one in half. We have to extend this. We need to add each bar. Okay, so we have to extend this. This is the little bar. This is the big bar, little bar, big bar, little bar, big bar. All right, and then there's another big bar up top that actually bolts into the sheet metal of the car. All right, right here. So we need to add a little bar, big bar to this right here in the center. The top one we don't want to mess with because it goes into the headlights. If you recall how the front end of this car looked. This row right here we don't want to mess with because it goes into these lights, which is going to get moved down. We want to simply add one right in here. The one that just stops, kind of. It overhangs a little and stops. That's the one that we want to double up and put it somewhere. So I spent the other night asking myself, how do we remake this shape? Now, there's a lot of people way more talented than me. I actually consider myself, honestly, truthfully, not very talented at all when it comes to this stuff. I'm very new to metalworking, and so I kind of figure this out as I go. But what I did was I laid this thing up here. I took a piece of cardboard, laid it down, and I copied all of my measurements right about here in the center. So we want to come through here and roughly cut about right here. Well, we really want to cut this in the center. Okay, in the center here and the center here. And we want to duplicate a little bar, big bar and add it in. So I wanted to build these legs so that I could literally cut this and extend it. And so that's what we've done with this piece. This is our template. Okay, it took me a good hour worth of measuring and cutting to figure all this out. So we have the piece, let's see here, that will bend around the corner like that. These will pretty much bend like that on the lines. The little bar will bend like that on the line. And this is pretty much the center. And I figured out one side, and then when I laid it out on the metal, I duplicated. This is the center of the grill. Now we have to get that curve in there. So this is going to be a little bit of work, okay? And I don't know if I'm gonna get it right the first time, but I've thought about it all week and I think I know what approach we're gonna take. I'm thinking that we'll leave this panel flat like this on cardboard, all right? And then what we'll do, and we also can't So originally, you can see where I patched it with tape. We need a bend on this line, but we can't cut this where it bends because the way theirs is, if you noticed, okay, their piece is just formed right here. So this tight edge is kind of pushed back and formed. Now this is probably gonna be a stamped piece of metal. We don't have that stamp, you know, that's a huge machine, probably stamp that. So we got to do it by hand. So I'm thinking that we will come in here and we'll cut the metal out like this, a flat piece of metal. And then we'll lay it on the edge of something and we'll start the bends like this. So I can get it to bend, okay, like that. And then we're gonna have to start putting stretch in the backside of these bends. We're gonna have to bend, stretch, and hammer and work the corners in like that. Okay, same one with the big one. And I cut my template in the center so that it would bend like this, because then it's also got to bend like this because it's like that. So we got to fold it, stretch the backside, and bend it like this, and then fold the backside, the edge. And we need to do that times 2 so that we have a whole entire centerpiece. All right, so after a lot of work, we have a piece, and it's pretty wild. I overstretched it, and then I had to go back and shrink that side, overstretch one side, and then we had some growing pains on this. We broke the leg off of it, stomping on it, so I had to stop, grind paint, had to gusset. The bar was too long, we had to cut the bar in half, shorten it because the teeth, I think that's what we were struggling with, shrinking that. It acted like it wasn't shrinking anything, and now I know it's because my spread was too long and the teeth weren't fully engaging. So you're going to have some growing pains on your tools that you're going to have to stop and address. That's why I kind of just cut the time lapse off. But I think we're there. So these, I've hammered these kind of at a 90. These are not at a 90. If we look, let's see here, that's holding the camera parallel with this plane, and as you can see, that plane is tilted back. This holding it parallel, that is not tilted back. So them need to be rolled up just a little bit, but I can fine tune it later after it's welded in. But this ended up working out perfect because what ended up happening was this one would go into there, and if I can get it to do it one-handed, it ended up working out like that, where I was able to force that in there and that piece in there. That definitely formed it a little more into 90. We can go back and hammer and dolly it into the shape that we want after it's all welded in and we fine tune it, but that was just pure luck that I was able to cram that underneath there. I have been kicking the mess out of these things and really working myself with them. I struggled on the curved pieces because they can only do this depth right here of this throat, and so I looked this week into buying some other ones that had, you know, the 8-inch throat. I think we're gonna have to upgrade. I think that this is another just growing pain where you think you'll be okay with this, and we were for the tubs. That was perfect. That's all you needed to roll a flange like this. But then when you get to stuff like that where you need to shrink in, you know, 3-4 inches, that's where these no longer work. So sadly, that's just part of growing and expanding. I think I would keep these though. I have a warranty on them. They're perfect for doing a flange because you can throw them all the way in, and it's the perfect depth for a weld-on flange, and you can keep equal spacing. You know, you don't have to use a guide or nothing. But dude, was nervous about this piece big time. I got to put the brakes in it real fast, and then I hate to do it, but I guess we're gonna cut the grill. Still need drill holes. We got to clean all of this up in here. Take a little grinder, clean all that stuff up, grind the back sides. But man, I think we might be there. I really do. And that is freaking crazy that we just made that in the garage right here. It's nuts. This is where I wish I had that radius gauge, which like this right here is kinked up. But if I had that radius gauge, I would be able to measure the radiuses of this and just put in this. I won't have to lay it on top, but I don't have it. Alright, this thing looks so cool. I cannot believe that we built these in the center. Like I said, they need a little bit of tweaking, but I think after we get it welded together, we can handle all that. Man, that looks pretty freaking good for something built like that. Yeah, that's pretty good. This looks like it might need to be stretched a little bit. I think I can probably get this in the shrinker and stretcher. Actually, no, it's got to go down right here. It's too high. So by the time I bring that down, it might be that. I think I can get the grill in a shrinker and stretcher once I weld it all together. I kind of wanted to get it to go ahead and weld it together because then I'll have a flat plane to kind of work off of. But dude, that is amazing. So what we're looking for, again, 4 inches between big grill, big bar, and big bar. So pretty much center of that big bar down there, center of this big bar. This is a big one. That's a big one. 4 inches. Okay, so all of these were 4 inches from that one to the top, which is in the car. It was 4 inches. So we're looking for the center of the big one to the center of the big one. I've moved my lines over 1/2 inch right there. 4 inches. All right, center of the bars. All right, so I've got everything within a 1/16. Now all I need to do is fine tune it. It was kind of flopping around. Fine tune it, make sure everything is perfect. And then, man, I wish I could just freaking weld these overlapped. But I guess then we have to go back and cut through them just like you do sheet metal. And probably have to weld one side at a time. Probably have to go. I don't know. It's going to be, it's going to be a little iffy. But we'll do the centers first and then work our way out. Let's just get after it. All right, so there is our grill. It's crazy. So now we need to go in here and do a little grinding work, a little dolly work to smooth out these corners so they look a little smoother than that. Roll them at the correct angle. They're kind of twisted right now. This needs to kind of stay where it's at, but this fronts need to be twisted this way. So it's going to be a little plier work and dolly work now, but dude, that's amazing. This was definitely a piece that I was worried about, and it's definitely not perfect by any means, but by the time you get the paint on it and the bars on it, this thing basically just kind of holds the bars. That's all it does. I think this thing should look pretty good. We definitely got to dolly in the curves and stuff into here, so a little more handwork. All right, so now that we have our grill extended, now we need to start extending the sides, and then we're gonna be working our way around. So we're gonna chop this out right here, so that now this can be down here, and then we'll have to add a strip straight around. It should be a 4-inch piece of metal all the way around, pretty much perfect. That should be what's needed. Then once we have this drop down the 4 inches, we can move around the corner to start addressing our wheel arches, drop front wheel arches, headlights, check the shapes on the fenders, and then this front end will be done. So we're making progress, but it's definitely taking some time. All right, so that's how much it goes down, which in theory should be 4 inches. Man, I'm so curious how this thing's gonna look whenever it's done. Having like a longer front end, it might hurt it because there's so much flatness. Fat 4 inches, about the thickness. Yeah, it'll be about the thickness of the cutoff wheel that went in there. And then this side has to swing up like that. We can move these up. So that's 4 inches on the money right there, dude. All right, and then this side. That just needs a 16 inch more. Might have to clamp that one. That's 4 inches. All right. So we extended the grill 4 inches, and we've moved the bottoms down 4 inches. Now we need to cut us a 4-inch strip, a filler strip to go in here, and break the 90s for around there. We're not gonna mess with the wheel well yet because we don't know what we're gonna do. We're just gonna leave it a little long, probably. And that will be our 4-inch extension on the front. All right, so we're gonna take a pause on this because we're gonna go with a actual duct here. So we're gonna go with an air intake duct that we're either gonna funnel into turbo, intercoolers, or the brakes, or we're just gonna leave it open. Not sure exactly what we're gonna do yet. We're gonna order a kit that has a duct that goes in here, and that's gonna give the front end a little bit more stuff to it, I guess you can say. I think where it won't look so naked. I feel like that if we have this big flat piece right here, it's gonna look too much like some kind of delivery truck or something, and we need something actual functioning in here. Even though we're gonna have a bar here and a bar down here, I think something needs to be functional there. While we're waiting for this though, I went ahead and drew some lines on the fender. I think we're gonna go ahead and cut this because we're gonna try to move this, basically move it around, kind of scoot this way for turning radius, that way extend it. We don't really want to go up any higher at all. We want to kind of keep the lowness to it. So we don't want to raise that, but we want to be able to turn. I don't know if that's going to be possible. Might have to raise that just a little bit. But we got to figure out basically how much do we have to cut out in order to make this thing where it will turn. All right, so here's the issue. I want this low. I mean, if I could have it up to me, it'd be like down here, even though it does get to a point where, believe it or not, you can have your front fender line too low and it looks stupid. There is a car out there, I cannot remember what it is, I've seen it. My upholstery guy was actually working on one, that the front has fender skirts. I almost think it's like Austin Hilly or something. Something that had fender skirts on the front. It looked absolutely stupid. So to not see the front tire will make your ride look like trash, in my opinion. But to see too much of it can also make it look like trash, in my opinion. So this is a very delicate area to make sure that we're right on. So we cut it, and then basically we marked it with a piece of tape,
and we took the thickness of the tape out. So this is what we actually sectioned out of the fender. And this was through where all the holes were and all that. So this was kind of a nasty piece, and then through the flange right here. It was a good area to section some metal out of and get rid of the old metal. So that's what we took out. So if we bring this arch down, the thickness of tape, I think that's an inch, roughly an inch, and we bring it in roughly the same distance. That's all we got on turning radius, and then we're in the fenders. Now this is something you got to keep in mind, is when you're driving forward, which most of the time you're going to be driving forward, your knobs of your tires, street tires not as bad, but especially mud tires, when we lift trucks, and I've been doing lifted trucks and clearancing wheels for trucks for ages, the knobs will completely rip crap apart. So it's a little bit different game with mud tires than like a white wall or something like that. So you can't make contact with that. So if we go right there, we would be making contact with it. It'd catch the inside of the lip on this fender and it completely rip it off. Now, one thing we are gonna do is we're gonna go back on the inside of the lips when we're done, and we're gonna weld in like a 1/4 inch bar or 1/2 inch bar. And that's gonna really strengthen up these fenders, whereas hopefully if it turns too sharp when it's low, the knobs will hop over the edge and not have this edge to grab onto and rip down. Hopefully it'll just kind of go doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, which is totally fine. So what we're probably gonna have to do is basically move these up the thickness of a tape, which again, I think that tape is like an inch. Now on the back, we're not as bad, so we could drop the back and we're hitting right there. It's a decent turn. I don't have the steering rack yet. It is ordered, it's just a custom order, so it has to be built. And I don't know how far we're gonna be turning. That's kind of a lot. But this is gonna be a driver, not a race car, so we want to make sure that we don't treat it like a race car where you're using like a stiletto rack or something and you hardly have no turning at all. We wanna make sure we actually have turning radius to get in and out of parking spots. So again, dropping down, unfortunately, is just not gonna work for us. Now we're gonna have to section this thing again in the center to lower that and do all these extensions, but I'm just trying to kind of look at it for right now. And I do need to take that out here very soon so that I can get this set correctly, because it does hold the bottom out. And this will go up a little. I just can't go that way right now. Let me go ahead and, I guess let me go ahead and cut that in half so I can get this top right, maybe. Roughly like that, but it's gonna go up some more that way. So if we see that, I don't really need that cut. Let's see here. So we have all the way to there. Now on this one, this side is not as bad because the knobs will just be running over this right here. So it's gonna sound bad, like it'll make this noise if you've ever owned lifted vehicles or vehicles with stuffed mud tires is what we do down south. This will stuff tires in with hardly no lift. When they rub against stuff, they just make this thumping noise kind of. That would be okay on this side because it's going up. So it's, I mean, if you had nasty enough knobs, it could still grab it and pull it in, wrinkle this whole thing in, but this is not. It's just going to keep jumping over the tire. And it's air ride, so you can easily just, little touch of a switch, bump it up a little bit for clearance. So I think we're going to be okay with this one. By the time we cut this bottom and this goes this way just a touch, I've got, let's see here, about 1/2 of an inch in there. So by the time that goes that way, and then this goes on up where it should be at, I think we'll be okay by just sectioning like an inch. And that should be about what we got to put in there, but we're gonna have to make that piece on like a bead roller or something, or honestly, with it being so small, might just put the rod in and just weld it, honestly, because it doesn't even really, I mean, it's so freaking small. By the time you put a rod in there and weld this way and finish that out with body filler, you won't even see it. And then when you turn this way, beautiful. Now that is, I think we're on the frame rail. Yeah, we're on the frame rail right there. So that's perfect. I mean, you're in the freaking frame rail, and I don't think it's going to be turning that far. Now, with this rack, we can limit how much we turn. So we can put stops on this rack where basically it won't turn. But, you know, like right there, we could set it where we don't have so much. I don't want to lose any more height. This is ride height right here. So at ride height, we basically have the wheel tucked, if you come around and see. So that's a pretty good look right there at ride height. I'm happy with that. The top of the rim is nice and tucked in. And then when it's bagged, let's see here, it's gonna drop 5.5 inches. So if I could get the jack out and lift it all up in that mess, but let me just show you. It's gonna drop 5.5, which is gonna be right there. So the top of the fender line will pretty much be like up in here. So I think that will be perfectly fine. I think it'll look good when it's laid out. I think that will be drivable. And I don't think there will be any issues with that. So all we gotta do now is section this in. This little piece down here, about the finger, it needs to come down. Again, same as that. So I'm thinking we're just gonna extend these with little pieces of rod on the inside, or just wait until we do the full loop rod, probably. And just weld them little sections in. I think that's what we're gonna do. All right, so sitting here thinking, and I think we're gonna do something a little different that's normally frowned upon. Clearly, after all this chopping, I know how to do butt welds in sheet metal. I know how to get them flush. I know how to do butt welds. I've done them through this whole entire car. But there's a handful of old school guys that do overlap welds when they chop. So they do like this. They overlap the metal together. All right, and that's what I wanted to do when I first started this car, is just to overlap. Let me go ahead and tell you a little secret. We're not going to talk about the metal finishing stuff. That's a sensitive subject for people. When you body work this, okay, you can have all the smooth metal finishing you want. You're still putting epoxy primer, filler primer. You're blocking filler primer. You're probably doing 2 coats of filler primer. 2 coats of base coat, and 3 to 4 to 5 coats of clear coat. Okay, so you're going to end up, most hot rods, 6 to 10 coats of product. Your metal finishing is long gone. If you know the thickness of 6 to 10 coats of product, metal finishing does not matter no more at all. So when you're talking about keeping things flush, the body fillers and your primers and stuff, it's going to hide it all. It don't matter if it's flush or if it's not flush. It's still going to be under the thickness of all of them products. I think on this one, we're going to overlap. I think we'll do spot welds all the way down it. We'll also stitch weld it. And then on the inside, we'll also stitch weld it. And then we'll run a rod around it. I feel like if the tire bumps this thing, that's going to make this edges absolutely freaking bulletproof almost, really strong. If we sit here and cut this, which I very well can, and butt weld it, we're only the thickness of the metal. But if we overlap this, then we're the thickness of, what is this stuff? We're working with an 18 gauge. I think this is between 18 and 19-ish. We'll call it 19, 18. That times 2, okay? I think that's probably going to be pushing 3/16 of an inch. I mean, that feels pretty thick by the time you double that up. And then you put a rod on the inside there, that lip is going to be 1/4 of an inch thick all the way around. So it's going to be just absolutely freaking bulletproof and amazing. I think that's what I want to do. We did order rust converter, okay, so that we can convert to rust. So the back side of this stuff is all painted, kind of. It's not bad at all, but we should probably definitely put the rust stuff over it. We should flat wheel that joint out, and then we should put the rust stuff over all of this. And then we should also try to do a epoxy primer, I guess, or maybe actually just a rust coating. We'll have to see how it welds. But we definitely need to get a treatment over all of this before we weld this up. So the rust stuff's at the shop. It was delivered, but I didn't bring it home. So we need to grab that, coat these parts, and I think that's what we're gonna do on this one, is we're gonna overlap it. It's not gonna really create a flare. I mean, you got excessive body work right here. Really, if anything, it's just gonna make it easier to do this body work, because by the time you go from here to here, this little swipe right here is gonna keep our welds under the body filler. But out here, it's not going to flare it out much. If it did flare it out a little, we all know that a little tiny bit, the thickness of 18 gauge flare it's not going to look bad. And then we just have to get this piece cut back in, which I'm almost thinking now that we'll just weld that exactly back like it was. And then basically we're just going to tilt it in like that. Okay, so that's going to be nice and easy, because we won't really have to do too much shaping down here at all, just grinding some welds basically. So I think that's what we're gonna do. I think that's the game plan. All right, so Sunday morning, we've been at it working on this front end. Dude, this front end is starting to look so sick. I'm so happy with it. So yesterday, we kind of figured out where we were going with the wheel arch, but I haven't locked it in. I went and got the rust treatment stuff that was delivered to my place of work, and I'm glad I didn't lock it in, because right down here the angle does change behind this metal. I'm about to show you what this metal is, but we jumped back to the front because we kind of need to tie this whole front end together, wrap it around, and then we can come up over the wheel arch. That way all the lines flow, and then all we got to do is duplicate it on the other side. So I researched yesterday on ordering some kind of duct, whether it was brake duct, air ducts, just whatever. I was gonna put some kind of duct there. I think that looks classy, that'll look the best. We don't want to throw a tacky fog light in. I don't think we want to throw in like a vent right there. You know, I think that stuff will be too tacky, and it'll take away from the beauty in the curves of the front of this body. This body is very curved, and I think throwing a flat vent in would kill it. So I slept on it all night last night, and I think I have a sick design that I want you to check out. So really wish I could open this door, but we're under severe thunderstorm warning here, and it is just raining, and the rain's blowing all in. So I'm not gonna be able to open it, so I'll try to get the best shots as possible. Got all that laid out yesterday, and I've worked all morning on this. Oh, check that out. Man, that looks freaking cool. All right, so it's basically just a vent to put air in there, so it don't hit. When the air hits here flat, it kind of puts it down the backside of the wheel. Also, it will put it in there under the hood with like the turbos and the radiators. It'll just help. Not only does huge grill put air through there, but it's just one more place for the air to get through there, and flat out it just looks good. Not 100% sure what I'm gonna do on the backside. Right now we just have it sitting in there. All right, but the detail that I have put into this piece to get it like this, I think is freaking amazing. So I'm very happy with how this piece has come out so far. And now we just need to build the other piece, and I'll show you exactly how I'm doing this piece. So we've put B-roll through here, curved the B-roll, and then we have a curve that goes in here. This curve kind of swoops the same when it wraps in there, but then it does take a sharp turn where it does go in there pretty much at a 90. And then we have this curve, obviously. Now this right here hasn't been welded up. This one I kind of didn't want to cut my big sheet, and so I kind of made this piece out of scrap, but I made it where I could use it. I just didn't make it like huge. Like if I was gonna cut this out of a big sheet, I would have made it all the way to here, so you have plenty of room to trim. But I did center it, so I think we're just gonna copy everything exactly over to another sheet and get it right. That's the same reason why this piece stops right there, because again, this was just scrap. and actually cutting it off this piece, I have the same piece enough for the other side, so we'll just literally build all this out of scrap. So if we look at this closer on the bench, it's actually not that complicated. Bead roll, the curved piece cut in. That was the hardest piece for me because I don't have a high volume air here at the house, so the air saw does take quite a bit of time, but it turned out clean. And then a round curve piece put on it and everything welded together from the back side so that the front side stays nice and clean. By the time we grind that and put the bodywork in there and stuff, we should be good to go. We might run the TIG over the inside to smooth it out. I'm not 100% sure. I really don't want to mess up my crisp edges, but we'll see. And then all we got to do is just weld these up. So let's get started and transfer this over to another sheet. All right, so here is our second piece. Now it's going to need a little dollying and shaping. But when I went to stick the magnet on to hold this piece at a 90, I realized that my magnet was a little tight on this one. And well, there's the mistake I made. So let's see here. It should be about right there. Bending on the wrong line. Stuff happens. I'm not throwing away this whole piece over that. We'll literally cut this right here and we'll bend to 90 and we'll weld that seam up. We'll grind that seam out. It's just a little, what is that, 4.5 inch seam, I think. So not the end of the world. Sucks that we didn't nail it perfect the first time, but it is what it is. Everything is symmetrical. This piece in the center, all of these B-rolls are the exact same. We step that back so that you don't take a chance of them not being perfect, and then you standing back at the car and they look crooked. So we want to purposely make them 1 inch difference. The bottom 1 inch shorter than the top. That way your eyes can't see any difference at all. But they are symmetrical pieces. We'll just be a little long on that side and we'll have to add a 90 to this side. So now all we got to do is get them in. I'm gonna at least get this one in right here so I can show you. But I guess real fast before we get them in, we need to go ahead and finish patching this up and then we'll stick them in. All right, so all we got left now, which you're gonna have to stay tuned, make sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, because all we got left is to figure out this wheel arch and then of course duplicate everything on the other side. We're gonna be checking these curves coming up. I'm gonna show you how the front end turned out. And I'm stoked. I think this thing's gonna be wicked, and you're definitely gonna wanna be on board to see this thing as it wraps up. All right, I don't know if this thing could turn out any better than that. I'm so happy that I did not go with no plug-in inserts. Originally, I was going to go carbon pieces of plug-in. I'm so happy that I made them by hand. That definitely, in my opinion, paid off where it looks really freaking good. I think this car is going to have an amazing, amazing stance and an amazing look whenever it's done. And this front end just makes me so much more pumped about getting this thing there. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do you dig this? Would you have done something different? We still have to put all the other bars in, remember? I just put them in for mock-up.